Well, thanks very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's critically important that this evening I shed light on a monumental issue concerning the Republic of Azerbaijan, a nation nestled among the Caucasus Mountains and the Caspian Sea. With a population of 10 million, Azerbaijan boasts abundant natural resources, particularly gas and oil, yet it is tarnished by a regime marked by corruption and oppression. For 3 decades, Azerbaijan has been under the rule of a single family, taking advantage of its vast fossil fuel wealth to perpetuate autocratic policies both domestically and internationally. This regime seeks to whitewash its image through the hosting of prestigious events like the Formula One Grand Prix, UEFA Euro 2020 and COP29, using these prestigious occasions to sanitise its tarnished reputation. Recently, I had the honour of meeting journalist Alexandra Lapshina, who shared his story of survival with me. In 2016, Lapshina was arrested in Belarus and extradited to Azerbaijan for simply travelling to Nagorno-Karabakh, a disputed territory also known as Artsakh, a disputed territory where since 2023 has been subject to ethnic cleansing of its indigenous Armenian inhabitants by Azerbaijan after a 10-month siege and a 24-hour military assault, leaving over 100,000 people homeless. During our meeting, he informed me that he spent 7 months in solitary confinement in Azerbaijan before an assassination attempt that saw him extradited to Israel for his own safety. His supposed crime? Travelling to a disputed territory, refusing to say that Karabakh is Azerbaijan, and calling out the Azerbaijani regime for what it was and what it is, a dictatorship. Both the European Court of Human Rights and United Nations Committee of Human Rights correctly found that Azerbaijan was liable for its illegal torture and arrest, but as it would come no surprise, the dictatorship of Azerbaijan ignored the decisions of such internationally respected courts. There's no doubt, Mr Deputy Speaker, that Azerbaijan is one of the world's most brutal and criminal regimes, on par with that of Iran and Russia. Azerbaijan's litany of crimes genuinely know no bounds. From bombing Armenian churches to imprisoning journalists and opposition activists, the regime's brutality is truly staggering. They've even occupied sovereign territory of Armenia and jailed government officials from Artsakh. Yet they continue to evade accountability through bribery and lavish events such as the upcoming COP29. Sadly, what's more disturbing is the infiltration of this regime's influence into our own backyard. Victorian Labor MP Natalie Suleiman has aligned herself with Azerbaijan's interests, proudly hosting its representatives despite their egregious and well-documented human rights abuses. As Australians, we can never turn a blind eye to such injustice. I implore the Australian government to stand up to this regime, sanction Azerbaijan and hold this criminal petro-dictatorship accountable for its countless human rights violations against journalists, opposition activists and Armenians. And finally, I implore all Australians to boycott COP29. No Australian should step foot on the soil of a regime that is covered in the blood of Armenians and journalists. Any visit to this regime would simply represent a despicable act. And I know that a majority of Australians, if they truly understood and were made aware of the outrageous injustices perpetuated by the regime in Azerbaijan, would stand with me in calling out such shameful acts and encouraging no Australian to step foot on Azerbaijani soil at COP29.
President, will I rise today to compelled to share with you the harrowing story of a brave journalist who endured untold suffering at the hands of the government of Azerbaijan. This year, I had the honour of meeting Mr. Alexandra Lapshina, an Israeli journalist, and heard firsthand the horrors he endured during his illegal imprisonment by Azerbaijan. Grim details which included torture and even attempted murder. And for what crime exactly? Because Mr. Lapshina dared to visit the so-called disputed territory of Artsakh, currently completely occupied by Azerbaijan, and published articles critical of its authoritarian leader, Ilham Aliyev. Unfortunately, Mr. Lapshina's case is not isolated. There remains countless political prisoners, journalists and Armenian prisoners of war, including civilians and government authorities from the Republic of Artsakh who have walked the halls of this very parliament that are held captive on fabricated charges. Their crimes even extend to the ethnic cleansing of over 100,000 Armenians from Artsakh in September 2023 after Azerbaijan launched an unprovoked military attack, forcing the entire indigenous Armenian population of Artsakh to leave. Madam Acting Deputy President, Azerbaijan is one of the most corrupt and aggressive nations in the world, and as representatives of a democratic and free nation, it is our duty to stand up for those who cannot speak for themselves, including the over 50,000 Armenian Australians who are rightfully outraged by the actions of this regime. I urge the Australian Government to outright denounce the egregious violations of human rights of Azerbaijan and demand accountability from those responsible. We cannot turn a blind eye to the suffering of innocent individuals like Alexandra Lapshina and ethnic Armenians.